Welcome back to Smart Architectural Programming, your go-to place for clean, smart, and scalable Java programming videos. Today we're diving deep into the essential part of Java, enums. Whether you're just beginning with our Intro to Java book or brushing up on your skills, this video will give you clarity on both simple and complex enums. So without further ado, let's get started. Also, this video is a companion video to our Introduction to Java book. So if you already don't have a copy, go grab yours today. So with everything that we discuss in this channel, first we need to understand exactly what enums are, right? We need clarity on that particular piece before we push forward. And the clarity is very, very simple. Enums are short for enumerations, which are special Java type used to define collections of constants. They give names to fixed set of values, making your code more readable and less error prone. So let's highlight a few things that I just said here. They're used to define collections of constants. So what are constants? They're constant values. And what are collections of constants? A list or a dictionary or things like that, basically, right? So, I mean, it's not exactly a list and a dictionary that we're talking about here, but that is something that comes to mind from our previous videos. Like we have collection of objects in a single variable. That's either a list or an object, but this is different. Like enum are a different thing here, and that's what we're going to cover here as we move forward. So as you can see in the next video, we'll clarify further how enums looks like. You see an enum, public enum day, enum called day, that's been defined here in curly braces, and all the values are the days on the week. But you'll notice that all of them are capitalized. What does that mean, right? What does that show to us? It's very, very simple here. As you can see, we have an enum called day. It represents the days of the week. With enums, you don't get just a list, but you also get type, safety, built-in methods, and more. Now, that is something that will come back on later. But let me use a marker here to emphasize what I mean. You'll notice all of these are capitalized, and the simple reason for capitalizing these values here is very, very simple. Constants generally by standard in programming are all capitalized, and that is something you keep in mind, and that's something that fairly commonly used in programming. So let's move on to the next part of this video. That is how you can use enums in a very, very simple manner, right? So you see our first chunk of code here. This is the first chunk of code that we need to cover, right? This is the first chunk of code that I want to discuss, right? And we'll go over one by one using different colors as we go down. So you look at this chunk of code, you see that we use enums just like we use any variable here. We defined predefined a set of constants that make decision structures like if or switch more intuitive. So as you can see, we had that we divide days of a month using that enum. Then we used another, we defined another variable, day.monday. So we're trying to access Monday. And if today date, which is this variable here, equals to day.monday, then we print start of the week. So it's pretty much used like, any variable. And they're just certain predefined constants that we can use to make certain decisions using if or switch statements. So next part is where you can see a switch statement here. Let me change my color to highlight exactly what I'm referring to out here, and let's use a color that's not gets covered in blue. I mean, yeah, give me a second. So let's use yellow here. So as you can see, this particular portion here, that's the part that we need to discuss next, right? And it's encircled in yellow for your clarity. So as you can see the switch statement here, you'll notice that this switch statement is basically what we're using here. So in this switch statement, you'll see that we are using the switch case syntax with enumerations is very concise and clear, right? And we're just using the constant values here based on the premise that if case is Monday, we print back to work. If it's Friday, weekend is near. And by default, it prints midweek grind if it isn't Monday or Friday. And this is because enums are objects under the hood. You also get to use methods like name ordinal functions, or values functions with enums, which make them a very, very concise and a succinct way to leverage these decision making tools while going over them. And now the last thing that we need to cover here, let me change this to blue or green. Yeah, let's just use green here. So this portion that you see right at the end, this is the second thing that we need to cover in this video. The third piece of code we need to cover in this section of the video. So what we're doing here is we're printing out every value in the enum, pretty new, which is pretty neat for usage and loops and user interfaces. Now, keep in mind one aspect to this here, and that is this is the same way we used for loops to list out everything in a list, basically. So to a degree, enums are just a specialized sort of variable or a list that contains constants instead of just, any collection of values that you might want to have stored in particular variables. So with that, let's go to the next part of the video, which is complex enums, which are basically a little beyond the simple constants that we referred and used in enums as of now. So to level up, we need to understand what complex enums are. Enums in Java are more powerful than many of you realize. At this point, many of you would be thinking that they're just something that you use instead of list if they're using constants, but you can add fields, constructors, or even methods to them, and that's where their power comes in. That's why they are a separate category that we're going over and trying to understand, and we're going to do that right now. So as you see this piece of code here, right, what you see here is an enum where each constant carries a data, mass, and radius. It has a constructor to initialize the values and a method to calculate surface gravity. What do I mean here by that? So each constant here, which you can see Mercury, Venus, and Earth, contains two values here, right? In brackets next to it. And this is the special way addition of enums. Enums we saw earlier were just simple collections of constants, which we could do in a list as well. But enums are more, like you could say, specialized for constants. But now you understand why we use enum separately. So we have three constants here: Mercury, Venus, and Earth. Just like a class, we have three constants values here. It's slightly different than classes as well, but keep in mind when we're dealing with specific constant values and processing them, enums could be a good way. So you see two values here, which are mass and radius of each of the planet. Then we also add constructors to them. As you can see, we have constructors, and then we finally see methods to calculate the surface gravity, which is this. And if you're wondering where the constructor are, I'll point that out to you as well. So this is that, and this is the constructor right here. So what this gives us in understanding is how enumerations and more complex usage of enumerations are essential for certain tasks within Java, which are related to constant processing or constant related activities or logic. With that, let's push ahead into more complex enumerations a little further. As you can see the code here, this prints out the gravity for each planet using the enums custom method that you saw earlier. Notice how clean and object-oriented the design is. This is what makes enums powerful. They encapsulate behavior with data. So here's the thing. Classes are there for certain activities. Enums are there classes are there for certain encapsulation of certain object-oriented programming logic, while enums are there for the encapsulation with data. It's a behavior. They encapsulate the behavior of the data in particular, and that's why we use enums. So keep that in mind as you move forward. Using enums, classes, or variables becomes more intuitive as you go further into the programming rabbit hole, but this is something that you need to keep in mind. So finally, we need to discuss when and why we use enums. So there are three important things that you need to think about when enums. You need to understand they are a specialized class. Whether you're defining days, direction, states, or strategies, enums keep your code structured and bug resistant, unlike just using them as simple variables, which, for further processing, which might have issues. But there are certain aspects to them as well, like more, if we can define them in more clarity, you can see those 3 number points that I just wrote down in green. You use them in 3 situations. When you have fixed set of constants, Number 2, when you have values have associated behavior or data. And number 3, when you want type safety and maintainability. Keep these 3 rules of thumbs in your mind, and you'll be pretty soon it will become more intuitive when you use enums rather than the way you see here. So, and that's a wrap on our enums in Java video. Today you learned the basics and explored the enums with fields and methods and saw real-world examples of how they clean up your code. If you're enjoying this series based on the Introduction to Java book, don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new topic on our channel. Want more examples and exercise? Check out chapter 8 in your Introduction to Java book by Smart Architectural Programming, which has detailed hands-on projects and exercises to help you dive deeper into this concept and become more intuitive with the concept that you're dealing with. And with that, we're going to wrap up this video. Hope that you enjoyed this video. Until then, this is Smart Architectural Programming, smart code, smart structure, and see you in our next lesson. Thank you.